Sup guys, my name is SmittyJ, and this video is going to be talking about something that I've wanted to talk about for a long time, but I just didn't think I could bring myself to do it, didn't think I could get through it without like breaking down and crying like way too many times. So see if I can get through this. It's something I really want to get out there. A lot of family members, a lot of people from my streams and stuff have wanted to know this story, and I've never told it fully to too many people. There's a couple people that know the whole story, but video is just going to be me finally getting it out there. But in the first 40 days of 2018, I almost lost my father 3 different times. And this is going to be me talking about it. So if you're here for normally happier videos, then I can understand you leaving now. But if you want to know what happened, here it goes. So January 1st, 2018, my father and I were watching the University of Michigan football game against South Carolina. Me and him are both very passionate about Michigan football, and so I come over to their house and we were watching the game, and afterwards we were planning on going to some family friends for a New Year's dinner. We had cooked up some food and stuff and we were going to bring it over. So after the game was over, we decided that it was time to go head out and head over to our friends, and so we're gathering up the food and stuff and getting ready, and we were carrying the food out to their minivan, and towards the end of carrying the stuff out to the van, there was only a couple things left, and I was gathering it up, and I looked at my dad and I said, "Hey, if you can just grab this," I don't remember what it was, but I was like, "If you can grab that, you know, we're good. I'll carry the rest of this." And he said, "Okay, just give me a minute," and he sat down on the couch, and didn't really think much of it. Maybe he just thought he was tired or he needed to put his shoes on or something. You know, I didn't think anything of it at the time. But eventually he ended up bringing the stuff out. As we were leaving, I knew my way to the friend's house, but I was just going to follow them just because. And so I went ahead and backed out of their driveway and pulled down the road about 100, 200 feet and just pulled off on the shoulder. And I was watching in my mirror, you know, just waiting on them to come by. I was just watching in my mirrors, and he backed out into the road, and he was still kind of at an angle, and I was just watching in my mirror, waiting for him to pass so I could, you know, go past him. Well, as I'm watching, all of a sudden the van started going in reverse, like super, super fast. And the wheels were still turned, and so it started to turn back towards the house, and then once it got into the grass, it actually slid around and did a full 180 and slammed into the front porch. I mean, he was going probably like 15, 20 miles per hour in reverse, slid and just slammed into the front porch on the passenger side. And so I put my car in park and immediately start running up there. And in my head, I'm thinking it's something with my mom, because my mom was in the passenger seat, and like I had no clue that something happened to my dad or anything. My worry was about my mom. For one, I'm a mama's boy, I always have been, but also, I mean, it slammed on the passenger side, so I just assumed she was hurt. And so as I get closer, I hear my mom screaming Bubba, which is the nickname my mom always called my father, just Bubba. And then she started yelling to me that, you know, something was going on with him. And so I ended up running around to the driver's side, and he was straight as can be. He was in the driver's seat, so I mean, he wasn't perfectly straight, but like as straight as you can get head to toe in the driver's seat. But he was slumped over on my mom, and eyes closed, um he was he was breathing, but it was like, I don't know if, like, imagine whoever is the worst snorer in your life, and like when they gasp for air while they're sleeping, that huge just like suck in of air. It was like that, uh for every breath. Like every breath of him was just super inhale, super forced, and I didn't know what was going on. I've never been in a situation like that. I start shaking him a little bit, but not real violent shaking him, but just like trying to wake him up almost, and like patting him on the chest and stuff, and kind of, um I thought it was a seizure. That's in my head. It just seemed like a seizure, and so I'm, trying to wake him up, trying to snap him out of it, and my mom ended up giving me her phone because I left my phone in the car. Uh, just I wasn't thinking, just got out of the car and left my phone in the car. So she gives me her phone, and I'm trying to get up where I can bring 911 up, and I don't know her phone. I didn't understand how to use her phone, and I was panicking, and so I had to give it back to her so she could call 911, and then she gave it back to me so I could talk to 911 and explain to him, everything that was going on. That he was, a 51-year-old male, diabetic, that he was unconscious, been in a car wreck and all that. And then I just sat there with him. I'm talking to mom, my mom, and asking her what was going on, and just trying to get him to wake up. That's all I wanted, was for him to wake up, because he honestly looked and acted like he was just sleeping, and it was just like, wait, I just wanted him awake. And so I'm shaking him a little bit and stuff, and it just so happened that there was a guy walking down the street, and I could see him the way I was looking at my dad. I could see through the windows or whatever. I could see him walking towards us, but up the street. And all of a sudden, I see him walking into the yard, and I didn't realize it when I was running. Sunglasses fell off the top of my head. I had them on the top of my head, and they fell off. And I watched this man come into the yard and pick up my sunglasses as if he was going to take them. And in the moment, I'm sitting there like fighting to make sure my dad's alive, and like trying to process that. And for somebody to just come and steal my glasses, it pissed me off super bad. Like, I don't know if the person was actually just picking them up or what, but it pissed me off so bad. I stood up and yelled at him. I yelled at the guy. I was like, hey, put the fucking glasses back down. And he was like, no, I didn't mean anything by it, or anything. And he like walked up and like kind of tossed the glasses towards me. But when I yelled, hey, it actually woke my father up. I mean, he actually like came to when I screamed real loud. And so he looks over at me, and he's looking at me like a real confused look on his face. And I was trying to remain calm, and I always call my father Pops. And so I'm like, hey, Pops, like, hey, you okay? Like, are you hurt? Do you feel hurt? And he looks at me and he goes, hey, you scared me. And I was like, you scared me, man. Like, what's going on? And he sits up, and I try to explain it to him, like, hey, you were in a car accident, and mom's fine. Because the way my father's wired mentally, like, it's protect all others over himself. And I know he would want to know that mom was okay. Like, that's just the way he was. And so I was like explaining to him, like, hey, mom's fine, but we need to focus on you right now. And so I'm like, hey, are you okay? Do you feel anything broken? Like, whatever. And he wanted to get out of the car. I don't know. I think he just kind of felt trapped in the car or whatever, but he wanted out of the car, and I didn't think that was a good idea, but I don't know. He's my dad, and so I was like, okay, let's do what you want. You know, bad things just happen, but let's get you out of the car. Maybe you'll feel better. And so he gets out of the car, and he's like leaning up against the car, and he's very unstable. Like he's kind of rocking back and forth and stuff. And he looks down and sees my sunglasses on the ground because the guy had tossed them up there. And he said, what are those? And I was like, those are my sunglasses. And it's kind of a little bit funny now thinking back, but it's not funny, but it's a little bit. But he looks at the sunglasses and then looks back up at me and goes, oh, I thought that was my loofah. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, he was out of it obviously, but like, I don't know why he thought that was his loofah, but he thought it was his loofah. And anyways, so I was like, hey Pops, I need you to get back in the car. I was like, I know you don't want in the car, but I need you to sit down and you need to listen to me. Like, just please sit down, you know, back in the car. And so he did, and he for I don't know, probably a couple more minutes, I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it felt like an eternity, but eventually the ambulance showed up. And ambulance came in, you know, came over and got him, checked on my mom, made sure my mom was all right, and ended up getting, you know, doing ambulance things, you know, like checking his pulse and checking his blood pressure and all that. And they got him in the back of the ambulance and just checking him out and stuff. And so I was talking to my mom and making sure she was really all right, because she's also the type of like, even if she was hurting, she knew he was in a worse situation than she was, and she wouldn't want any attention to go to her. And so I had to make sure that she actually was okay. And so then eventually one of the EMT people come over and grabbed me and was like, hey, I need you to get in the ambulance and let's talk, you know, I need you to talk up, you know, with them or whatever. And so I get in the ambulance, and he's sitting up right in there, and he doesn't look too bad. He looks super confused, but he's not like, you can tell there's no like bruising or scratches or blood or anything like that. He just is beat up, you know, you can tell he's like sore and confused. And so the EMT person was like, hey, we're trying to decide if he needs to go to the hospital. And again, at that time I thought it was a seizure, and so my concern a little bit was, if it's a seizure, he couldn't be a truck driver, because that's what he did for the last 20 years, was be a truck driver. And so wanted, like, it wasn't my biggest concern, but there was a concern there, you know, like as a truck driver you have to maintain certain stuff, and you cannot have seizures and be a truck driver. And so they were asking if he wanted to go to the hospital or whatever. And he was kind of looking at me, and I could tell on the way, like the look on his face, that was part of his thing. Like, hey, if I go to the hospital, I'm probably losing my job. And but anyways, they ended up asking him questions, and like, they asked him, what year is it? And I know my father well enough that I could tell in his head he was like, the year just changed, because remember, it's January 1st. So he, like, I could tell it was just like in his head, hey, I know it just changed to a new year, but I don't remember what year it just changed to. Like, I could see that on his face. And then they asked him, like, who was the president? And again, I could see on his face, like, oh yeah, it's that, oh man, it's that stupid guy with the bad haircut, you know, like, I could see that going through his head, but he just couldn't name who the actual, you know, who the president was. And so I kind of felt bad for him, and so I threw out the question. I said, hey, Pops, you know, like, what game did we just watch? And he immediately was like, oh, we watched Michigan versus South Carolina, and which was true. I mean, it was actually accurate. Then eventually the ambulance driver was like, hey, I think this is going to be on you. I mean, you're going to have to decide if he goes to the hospital or not. And oh man, I can't tell you how that made me feel. Like I said, my father has been a truck driver for 20 years. He's a provider. He prides himself on being the provider of the family. Like, he doesn't know any other way. And so for me to be like, yeah, you need to go to the hospital, and then it ends up being something super minor, but it risks his job, I would feel horrible. Like, I'd feel horrible if it was something super minor and he ends up losing his job and can't be a truck driver anymore just because I was worried. But on the other hand, I didn't want to lose my father. You know, I didn't want it to be something super dangerous, and like a week later he ended up passing away, and it be on me because I said no, he doesn't need to go to the hospital. And so I don't know. It hands down the hardest decision of my life. But also an easy decision, like, if that makes sense. I made him go to the hospital. I looked him dead in the face and I was like, hey, Pops, I need you to go to the hospital. Like, I need you to. I need to know you're okay. And so they ended up taking him to the hospital. I didn't go with him immediately because my mom was actually trapped in the van. With the way it was smushed up to the porch, the van wouldn't start. There was the engine wouldn't turn over. She couldn't get out, and plus she was disabled, and so there was no climbing out of a window or something like that. And so I had to have a tow truck come and pull it off the porch. And that was, I think we ended up waiting a good 30 or 40 minutes for the tow truck to show up. And so like I said, the van wouldn't start, and it was pretty cold out that day. I think it was only 40 degrees or something like that. And so I went into the house and got her multiple blankets and a beanie and a bunch of stuff to keep her warm, and I sat with her. And then once the tow truck got there, I ended up getting her out of the van, getting her into my car, and then we went up to the ER. And we were there 4 or 5 hours, and they basically were like, yeah, we think he had a seizure, and didn't give him any driving restrictions or anything like that. They were just like, we don't think he was taking his medicine right, because he, on blood pressure medicine, diabetes medicine, or diabetic medicine, and just a bunch of stuff. And they were thinking oh, he's not taking his medicine right, so that must be what caused it. And like I said, didn't give him any driving restrictions or anything. So we ended up going home and just kind of went about life. He was started taking his medicine correctly and everything. And so guys, that was the first way that I almost lost my father in January of 2018. I will be releasing another video soon that explains the other two. So I really appreciate you guys watching. It's the first time I've done a video like this, so I mean, not that telling a story about your father almost passing is gonna be a perfect video, but I hope it explained. I hope I explained as well as I could, and I hope it was understandable. So I really appreciate you guys listening. And if anything's like this has happened to you, or if you have lost a loved one, I'm sorry. And yeah, thank you for watching. And bye. Love you. Bye.